Hello, sweet friend. This is Legal Design Thinking in Real Life, a live series provided by Lawyers Design School. And I'm your host, Hannele Korhonen. And I'm laughing already because it's December today, and this is our last episode of the year. So we decided to do something extra special today. And so it's a holiday special with the most incredible guest and the most interesting topic of the year. I'm here with Elizabeth de Stadler, and she's a legal designer at Novcon. But most importantly, she's the queen of kindness. And that's our topic of today, kindness and how that might be relevant for legal design. Hi, Elizabeth. How kind of you to join me today.
Sweet. Hi, everybody from a very, very sunny South Africa. Isn't it amazing? You have snow, and here it's almost 30 degrees, and we're talking.
Exactly. We were just comparing our weather conditions before we started.
Yeah.
How are you? How are you today?
I'm very well. It's almost time for our big break in South Africa. Our summer holiday coincides with Christmas. So I have my Christmas pen.
Yay!
So I am, my holiday starts at the end of this week. And they've given us an extra day off on Friday because we won the Rugby World Cup. So it's a very festive week here in South Africa.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a big deal here. So to any New Zealand people joining us from New Zealand, I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
But hey, I want to start this with the story because I think that was the origin for this episode, because we met with Elizabeth in Helsinki in September in Legal Design Summit, as probably most of the legal design people in the world did. And it was the end of the summit on Friday evening, and Kat Moon had finished her talk, and I was doing me, and I started to cry, and I was kind of embarrassed because I'm an easy crier, and I went to the shadows of the room, and then I met Elizabeth there, and she came to me and said that, hey, do you need a hug? And then that was so, I don't know, that was so incredible. Then we hugged, and that I felt so much better, and she was being super kind to me. So that was the
Well,
original.
mostly I was telling you never to apologize for crying.
You're right, you did.
But I was wearing my Be Kind T-shirt, which was felt very prescient. You know, it felt serendipitous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very good talk by Kat Moon, and I know I have it on very good authority that you were not the only person who cried. I think it was an extraordinarily vulnerable talk, and I think as lawyers we all identified with some of her students and some of the stories she was telling about the very high levels of stress that they experience in law school already. So it was a very emotional talk. It hit home.
And I see Kat is in the chat. She's saying that,
Oh,
but
really?
Hannele, I cried on stage. So, okay, Kat, you win.
Woohoo!
Maybe you could use some hug from Elizabeth as well.
There's a virtual hug to you, Kat. But yeah, it was that talk did stay with us as well. It's something that my colleague Ilse and I talk about often. Because we see these stories every single day of law students and lawyers, junior lawyers, senior lawyers, everybody talking about the inordinately high levels of stress and general unhappiness and burnout. So I think today this topic is this is why I get so excited about this topic, because it combines my two passions, which is legal design and well-being. And I think the two are so interconnected. And I don't think we talk about it enough as legal designers, the emotional impact that our work can have on us and on the users of our documents and processes and all of the things that we redesign.
For sure. But hey, before we go into the topic, can you tell us something about yourself and your story?
It is a story as old as time. I grew up in an academic household, and because I at the time, my origin story is when I was 14, 15 in the mid 90s. This was, and my children don't believe me, but this was well before the internet and made the whole world accessible. But I was already knew that I was gay, and the only South African gay person I knew about was a South African judge named Kathy Satchwell. And I knew about her because she had just been appointed as a judge and then took the Department of Justice to the Constitutional Court in order to get equal rights for her partner to pension and all of the benefits. And so I decided, I think, to become a lawyer in no small part because of my sort of identification with this story. I ended up at a big commercial firm in Johannesburg, and I was there for, I think, about 4 or 5 years. And then this is where the story becomes very familiar, and what Kat was also sharing with us at Helsinki. I got completely burnt out. It took me many, many years to come to grips with mental health issues, and I now understand why the commercial firm setup was probably always going to lead for me to burnout. And then I became interested in plain language. I was specializing in fairness in contracts, and in about 2009, the South African Consumer Protection Act was promulgated, and it was revolutionary in one sense, and that is that it forces companies in South Africa to communicate in plain language in all legal documents and notices and disclaimers and things like that. So all of a sudden, everybody was looking for people who understood what plain language was. This is where the fact that I grew up in an academic household becomes relevant, because my father is an information designer. He was one of the first academics to go into information design in South Africa. He established a unit at the university in my hometown in Stellenbosch. And myself and my one business partner, Liesel van Zyl, even studied under him. I did information design already at university. And all of a sudden, there was this big need for lawyers who understood how plain language worked. And our plain language definition also contains visualization as a requirement when it's appropriate. And yeah, all of a sudden, everybody needed plain language services. And then in 2019, I met Tessa Manuello, who probably everybody who's listening to this talk will know who Tessa is. She's the glue, sometimes I say, that keeps the legal design community together. And she asked whether I wanted to be part of a cohort for her legal design practitioners course that she was developing. And I said to her, Tessa, but I couldn't possibly be part of this course because I don't do legal design. I'd be a beginner. And she laughed and laughed. So I didn't even know that we were doing legal design. I only learned about the word or the phrase in 2019. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, we took part in Tessa's inaugural course for facilitators, and we met Anna Posthumus-Mays, we met Dennis Potemkin and Laura, and all of a sudden, almost every single connection that I've made, including you, I can trace back to that course. And all of a sudden, we realized, oh, we're doing legal design. Yeah, so that's my not so short story. Yeah.
But that's a wonderful story, and also kind of ties into this topic of being stressed out and burned out, and then finding new paths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tessa is also in the chat. Hi, Tessa. Hi. So
I thought she might
we can just name drop anyone, and they keep
they appear like magic.
But it's really, really, really wonderful to see you in the chat. Thank you. Okay, so how do we then move on to this day's topic of kindness? Maybe we could start by, I don't know, talking about what does it mean? What does kindness mean? What does it mean to be kind? Do you have ideas?
Well, for me, and this is also the link between kindness or its role in legal design should become evident fairly quickly, is for me, kindness is about compassion, and compassion is about cultivating empathy with whoever you are being kind to. You can't be kind to someone or exhibit kindness without that empathetic feelings. And for maybe if there are people who are new to the discipline of legal design, it's actually, I always say legal design is a bit of BS, because all it really is you take the principles of design thinking and you apply it to legal contexts. And that might be a document, it might be a process, it might be a bit of technology, so a system. You apply those design thinking steps in the very first step in the design thinking process. But in fact, I don't see it really as a linear process. It's more of a circle. So this entire time, something that is absolutely crucial to design thinking and therefore legal design is that you have to empathize with the people who are going to be reading your document, using your process. And those people are hardly ever you. It's someone else. So for me, empathy, compassion, that's where kindness starts. Kindness is then when you turn that into action. So when you do something to recognize that compassion that you feel, or giving someone a hug when they are crying, or realizing, we were talking while we were waiting for the session to start, we were talking about another South African, Robert de Roy, who talks a lot about dignity and contracting. So his brand of kindness was in recognizing that when people don't understand contracts that apply to them, it erodes their humanity and their dignity. And how he put it into action was to create super accessible employment contracts. So for me, the kindness is when you take empathy and compassion and you put it into action. So actually, if you think about it, legal design is one giant act of kindness that we are doing. Yeah.
That's so wonderful way of putting it. And it's also that it's not just the act of kindness, but there has to be like genuine interest behind it.
Yes.
So that you are genuinely interested in other people and how they are. I mean, if we even think about that example in the Legal Design Summit, because it was very dark in the room and I tried to hide the fact that I was crying. So it took some like interest in you to be actually find out. Or
I mean, I'm always on the lookout for people who are crying who I can hug. No, I'm kidding. It is actually a little bit out of character for me to randomly go hug people, but I don't know, maybe it was Kat's talk made me feel very connected to everybody who just experienced it. And so for me, and I think this also then goes into the wellness side of things, but for me also what makes legal design such a compelling way of practicing laws, it fosters connection. And not just connection with the user, that one is obvious, but also connection between legal designers. Helsinki was such a wonderful almost celebration of that. There was 600 odd people there, all connected through their love of making law more accessible to everybody. And I really had this sense of belonging to a tribe, which is such an important part of being human. Is feeling like you belong to a group or a tribe of people. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I think it's this connection. You shared this Simon Sinek's video with me beforehand, and he was talking about this, that kindness is kind of a nature's way of keeping us connected, because we have this oxytocin levels grow, and then we actually, and the way Kat was talking, and then the kindness kind of spread through that talk to other
contagious.
people.
It is contagious. There's a wonderful, and I have a little, as per usual, everybody knows I don't go anywhere without a stack of books. But there's a wonderful book by, and I'll post all of these names for everybody, by a woman called Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a neurobiologist, and she writes about how emotions are made. And one of the things that caught me by surprise in the book, which I also thought was very relevant for today's talk, was about the contagion of kindness. So if you think about it, back when we were all gracing the savannas of Africa, there were a couple of things that were really vital to us staying alive, particularly when you are young. And one of them is attachment to your tribe. So there is a very there's a biological reason for that oxytocin release. It happens also during childbirth. That helps with bonding. But what also happens, which is so fascinating if you think in terms of your team at work or your family at home, is what Lisa Feldman Barrett found or talks about in a book, is there's this phenomenon where if you're standing at the bottom of a really steep hill and you're standing there with other people, what will happen is your breathing and your heartbeats will synchronize. And again, there's the release of all kinds of pleasant chemicals in your brain. And all of a sudden, what looked like a really steep hill, if you were climbing it alone, looks less daunting than it did before. And I always think that's such a wonderful way of describing the impact of kindness on a team. That active connecting with your team will automatically make difficult tasks, which very often we have to do as designers. We have to solve the problems that no one else could solve. But when we do it together with other people, all of a sudden that steep hill looks a lot more manageable through that active togetherness and compassion with each other.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I love brain chemistry. Love it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so one book down.
Yes. But why is it then, if we know that kindness is so important and good for us, and also business-wise, we can also think that there is a business case for kindness, why is it that we don't talk about that much? And also, I don't know if this is a cultural thing, but in Finland, I think that people often associate kindness with like being silly or being simple. Like if you smile to strangers, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So what's with that?
Maybe. So I think the way the modern world has been set up, a couple of things happened that I think were unfortunate. The first one, I think, happened kind of during the Industrial Revolution, where and this is fairly recent, right? Where we made this very strict division between work and life, right? So work and home, and that really happened, when people started building factories. So when people started going to work, right? That's when we developed this concept of a work week, of working hours, of professional behavior, and some of that had to do with that separation between like who you are at work and who you are as a human, unfortunately. So at Novation, we have this saying that we don't believe in work-life balance. It's all just life, all of it, right? And there's nothing, no topic, no behavior, no expression of yourself that is inappropriate for work, unless it is also inappropriate in general, right? So obviously expressing hatred and racism and those kinds of things is not allowed, but or tolerated, but that is because that is just generally unacceptable behavior. So I think the first part of the answer to your question has to do with that division of work and life. There's a certain way to behave at work. You have to be strong. You have to be unemotional, which is absolute nonsense, right? I mean, it's also very bad for you to suppress your emotions. And the other reason, I think, also has to do with the fact that we seem to think that our work doesn't have to be meaningful, right? We became somehow really focused on the part that makes us money, and we think that the more meaningful skills, human skills, empathy, etc., over time became less valuable somehow than the hard skills. But that again is a fiction. I mean, it was created again in the Industrial Revolution. Hard skills used to be anything relating to a machine, and soft skills were the rest. So that's why I'm really excited, because I think what all of these the technological revolution, what do they call it, the fourth industrial revolution that we're going through now, is starting to emphasize those human skills again, because those are the skills that the machines can't replicate. So I think there's a return to really integrating work and the rest of life, like it was, when we were still agrarian societies. Yeah. So a wonderful book to read about this is this book called Ikigai. I almost dropped Morticia. We'll tell them about Morticia just now.
Yes.
But also there's The Finnish Way. I brought this as well for you, because I hear you about the smiling, but if you think about sisu and resilience, it bears a very strong resemblance. And in fact, this book refers a lot to the Ikigai book, where they talk a lot about living again as a community and creating as a community, and looking after each other, and that is the characteristic of many of the places in the world called the blue zones, where people are the healthiest and they get the oldest, as this idea of working as a community. It's almost a more agrarian kind of society. Everybody looks out for each other, and we live according to the seasons, and
Yeah,
I hope this is making sense.
But it's interesting that you bring up sisu, for example, because there is research about sisu and what it actually is. It's definitely about this, that community is a big thing, but then it's also tapping into your mental health, but also this sense of that there is something bigger than you within us. So it's like drawing those internal and maybe spiritual, maybe, or something like that. So I think it's super interesting.
I mean,
in this respect.
I've been, I think I told you, as I was preparing for today's talk, I've been drawing a lot. Sorry, I keep the camera is inverted, but you'll see lots of pyramids.
Yeah.
And one of the pyramids that I keep drawing is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I was trying to figure out, where does kindness fit? And then I started reading towards the end of his life. Maslow said that there was actually a top level of that pyramid that was missing, right? So it starts at the bottom with the psychological needs, so food, water, rest. Then the second layer is safety, so security. I would add to that these days, psychological safety is also important. So it's not just physical. Then comes love and belonging, so intimate friendships, relationships with family, etc. Then comes esteem, so feeling good about your accomplishments. Then comes self-actualization, so feeling like you've achieved your full potential. And what he said was, well, that's where it used to stop. But now he added, and lots of people have been writing about it, also that self-transcendence. In other words, having that sense of deeper meaning in your life. And I think that's where sisu also sits, is feeling like you're connected to a whole. So community for me also sits there. Ikigai sits there, finding the true purpose for your life. And kindness sits there, right? Kindness is outward looking. It's not self-actualization is inward looking, but kindness is outward looking. There's more. It's about more than just you. So I think, kindness, sisu, it's ikigai. It sits at that top part, and kindness and charity and compassion is crucial.
For sure. I love your drawings, and they make it so concrete how this all sits together.
I'm very old school, I hear the kids now with their Canva and their Miro boards and all of these things, but I still want to hold a piece of paper and a pen and doodle. It helps me think.
For sure. Do you think that there is there is, can you be too kind? Are there boundaries to kindness? What do you think?
Yes and no. So sometimes, so when you're really stressed, people talk a lot about the flight, fight, freeze, right? Is the body's response to stress. There's a fourth one that people don't often talk about, which is called fawning. And this one is quite personal to me because when I was suffering from depression, that's how it manifested for me, is in fawning. So what that means is you become, a lot of people talk about having a savior complex or a hero complex. It's where you give, because kindness is an act of giving. You give, but at your own expense. So you will just carry on giving and giving, and it's part of your brain's. Your brain is trying to make you feel better, because every time you give, you get that hit of all kinds of happy hormones, of which oxytocin is one. So it can be destructive if it is a response to stress. So I always say, you can't. Kindness really starts with being kind to yourself. If your inner voice with yourself is very very critical. For a lot of lawyers, it manifests itself in perfectionism. Right? You never think your work is good enough. Then it can actually be harmful to you to be. You could actually be exhibiting kindness to others almost as a way of concealing to yourself that you're that everything, that you're not well. So it can have that component, but kindness it can also be healing. So there's a lot of research on recovery from depression, for instance, and fundamentally I believe that depression is in no small part being disconnected from other people, but one of the things that people also talk about is being disconnected from meaningful work. Right? So I think a lot of lawyers suffer from this, is where they are working and they're working very, very hard, but they don't think what they do is meaningful. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes the way in which they practice law isn't meaningful. You're not helping people. But I think when you do it in the way that legal design prompts you to practice law as an act of kindness, and you connect with your client on that level, and you're connecting with your colleagues, I think that kindness can also be an antidote. But you have to be careful. If you are one of those people who are always kind to others but at the expense of yourself, that is usually a warning signal. So you have to be careful. I believe, but this is very difficult. That setting that boundary and being kind to yourself first and foremost is very important. It's a very good question.
It is, because, and I asked because I've struggled with it myself, and really tried to find that balance. And I think that there is one pair of words with which are giving and then also receiving. Are we able to receive kindness and not just because I think that we build these blocks for receiving, and are we able to even recognize the acts of kindness that we receive all the time?
I mean, often we don't think we deserve kindness. If you don't think you deserve kindness, that is a sign that all is not right with the world. Everybody deserves kindness. And you can also, and I think this is so important, you can give kindness and it can also be positive for you, right? Both parties to a kind act receive benefit from it. Lots of people think in order for something to be kind, it has to be self-sacrificing, but it doesn't. It's not a competition.
For sure.
I don't lose anything. But for some people, kindness can manifest in a way where you are actually losing something. So you have to look after yourself as well. It's not selfish to look after yourself.
Yeah, and you need self-awareness to identify those situations where it's too much.
Absolutely.
How was it for you when you started your recovery? How did you start doing that work? Or Is it too deep? You don't have to share any.
No. I will tell you. So the first thing I want to say about that is I don't think it's ever quite done. I think I am the most well that I've ever been in my life. And a good friend of mine, we went and we climbed a mountain on Saturday. And as you do, you know, we were talking about we were talking about our fathers actually, but we were talking about whether it is. She asked, "Is it necessary to go through all of these hard things in order to get to, you know, a point of self-acceptance?" And my answer to that question was yes. I think it's ongoing work, right? My psychiatrist 10 years ago, when I first met him, said to me, "Your depression will cure you." And I said a very rude word and walked out. Because I thought, like, what's next? Are you going to like pull out
that
a bunch
was not
of
very
crystals?
optimistic.
No, but I didn't believe it.
Oh.
So I think that was the biggest barrier for me initially, is I believed in mind over matter, you know, like just toughen up, get over it, get over yourself. I was very unkind to myself. So that was the most important thing, I think, for me to learn. Yeah, but it's ongoing.
Yeah, and it takes years and years and years to actually like start to see the difference.
But it is very fulfilling.
Yeah, it's the most fulfilling. I've also been diagnosed with depression almost a little more than 10 years ago. So maybe we were almost there.
Maybe we did it at the same time. Yeah. So this is another book. This book changed my life, by Johan Hari, Lost Connections. And he writes about, this was the first book about depression where I thought, okay, actually this is helpful. But he writes about connection also to meaningful work, which is the first time that I made that connection between wellness and the legal design way of life, because it fosters connection. So the book is called Lost Connections, but I think the way in which we ply our trade fosters connection between each other, between us and our clients, between us and the users of whatever it is that we're redesigning, which is often not the client. So in Rob de Roy's example, his client is the employer, but the employee is the user of the document. I think often lawyers don't make that shift, right? You have to connect. There are lots of people to connect to. You have to connect to your client. They have needs and wants and objectives, but we also get to look at the ultimate users. So it's just all about empathy and connection. So no wonder, you know, I think legal design can make you better or happier. Yeah.
And that is where the meaning, comes from, when you actually understand the people you are serving, rather than you're just working with some documentation or paperwork. They're actually actual human beings behind.
Yes, and you're creating. That's the other thing that's so fulfilling about it. You're creating something together with other people. And that's where this connection to meaningful work comes in, and which can also, which I think is also a kindness. So we sit and we, you know, when you think about that empathizing process where you are doing user personas and research, and ultimately you do the hard work of getting to your how might we statement. A how might we statement is essentially an agreement between everybody to say this is meaningful. Solving this problem for this group of people is meaningful. And I can't think of any stronger bond in a work context than working together towards something that you've agreed is meaningful. It's magic.
It is magic. It is magic. Do you have any examples to share of kindness and legal design in your work?
Well, so I think for me, and this is something that I can't take the credit for, you know, one of the sort of earliest nudges that I felt towards plain language and practicing a more mindful form of law was when South Africa, went through a big change in the 90s, and our government decided to draft a plain language constitution. And that gave rise to all kinds of interesting innovation in law. I think the act of drafting a Bill of Rights that is in plain language was already a really potent example of legal design, but something that is very strong in South African innovation is access to justice and the concept of something that is called Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is almost like the South African Sisu, right? So Ubuntu means I am because we are, right? So it's this acknowledgement of the fact that no man is an island. None of our achievements we reach on our own. Everything is the product of a community of people, and that flows right through to even how our constitutional court was built. So part of the principles of Ubuntu is a concept that's called non-hierarchical justice, which is also something we spoke about in Helsinki. And we call it justice underneath a tree. So our constitutional court, for instance, the layout, the judges sit at the same level as the council, as the clients, as the public. Everybody sits on the same level, and the way in which the windows and the building was designed is the light that comes in, it feels like you're sitting underneath a canopy of a tree. And I really love talking about this as an example of legal design, because legal design is not just about documents that are pretty, that has little icons in them. It really is fundamentally about this principle of communal law as a communal activity and access to rights. So my favorite projects in general, that we do is where we have very complex subject matter. So we do a lot of work in financial services, and so we do a lot of work on some of my favorite projects has been on home insurance, of all things. But I can't think of anything more personal than home insurance. And it really used to bother me why insurance companies speak to me in such inhumane ways when we are talking about something that is so personal. So I really love it when we get to reword those policies so that people can really understand them, so that there's higher predictability for them about what they are covered for, what they're not covered for, so that in some small way, I believe, if something really bad happens, at least we are taking away that friction of trying to understand what am I entitled to? What protection are you going to give me? And it's simple things like what we realized is insurance companies almost always talk in terms of what they don't cover. So what we always do is the first thing is we flip that and we say, well, actually, let's not do like triple negatives and say what we don't cover. Let's say what you are covered for first. And just that makes such a huge difference. One of the biggest problems that we had on one of our first projects was when we did user testing afterwards, is the biggest problem was that people didn't realize what they were reading was the insurance contract. They were saying, well, when are we getting the fine print? Like, but it is the fine print. That was very rewarding. But for me, I think our constitution and our constitutional court is the most compelling example of legal design that I can think of. And then obviously Rob de Roy's work. Hannele did an episode with him as well. He's one of my favorite humans. But he's managed to incorporate dignity and Ubuntu into the way in which he thinks about contracts, and not just employment contracts, even shareholders agreements. He thinks about in those terms, which is really so compelling. He talks about agreements. This is beautiful. It's a heartfelt expression of agreement. Like, I like that word, heartfelt.
Yeah, and if you think about the impact of that work, like how it spreads kindness, but also this like justice and equity and all these.
Yes, so come to South Africa. We do cool things.
You sure do.
Yeah.
Hey, before we end this what ended up being more deep episode than hilarious.
I'm sorry.
No, it was.
Shock you.
I think it was me because I was just like, yeah, tell me more, because you had
Motisha and I will try to be funny for the last 5 minutes. How's
yes.
that? She's
But please
from
share that
Helsinki.
story, zombie unicorn.
It's Novcon's. She's our mascot. I'll be posting about her quite a bit from our company page over the holiday, because I want to talk about her. But where she came from is when Ilse and I went to Helsinki to the Legal Design Summit. We were living in the design district just down the road from a little goth shop. And on the very first evening we were there, we just landed. I think it's my very first photograph in Helsinki is of Morticia in the window of this goth shop. And every day we walked past and I would stop and stare at her until the poor woman who owns the shop came and said, well, she's not for sale, but I've seen you stare at her. Like, you can have her. Which was an act of kindness. But yeah, she's our zombie corn. Anyway.
Hilarious. But tell me, what are you currently working on? You are now going for a vacation, but work continues afterwards.
Yes, so we've got a number of projects on the go at the moment. We do a lot of work in data privacy, so we're always writing all kinds of manuals and user documents around privacy and protecting privacy. So that's kind of something that we're always working on. At the moment, we are doing a legal design training project with one of South Africa's biggest retailers on their returns policy. I'm really enjoying that project because there are lots of different users, some of them internal, the people who have to decide whether to accept your return or not, as well as obviously the consumers. We are just about ready to get started on another insurance project. This is home insurance for the ultra wealthy. They're going to be an interesting audience. Affluent mature, I think they're called in LSM language. And then we are also... we've just finished some work on a shareholders agreement. So my life is full and varied. My business partners' lives. It's a lot of fun. I must say, fun in the true sense of the word.
Oh, that's so. Yeah. Sounds great. And where can people find more about you? How can they connect with you?
So the best place to connect with us is on LinkedIn. You can either look up my personal profile, or you can just go to Novcon. We've got a pretty funny website for those of you who are still looking for the laughs. But yeah, LinkedIn and our website is the best way to connect with us. And I'm always happy to chat to people and to find out more about what they do and what the problems are that they're trying to tackle. That's my happy place, talking about problems. So please do reach out. I promise sometimes I'll be less deep and more funny.
I think these two go hand in hand. So there's
so I'm told.
Not one without the other.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for taking the time and spending this. I thought that I was receiving during this session. So thank you so much.
No, it's just really wonderful, and I had a lot of fun this week. Maybe too much fun at the expense of other work that I was supposed to do, thinking about this topic. So thank you very much for creating the space where we can talk about it, because I think it's so important. And I also think it's a very nice Christmassy topic, kindness.
Yes, and we need to remember to be kind, not just Christmas time, but throughout the year.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, and thank you all the wonderful people watching and listening to us there, and keeping the chat busy. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for this year. So many wonderful episodes, and we'll come back next year. Have a great holiday time wherever you are spending that. So bye.